introduce her as she was helping you with the gifts. This is Jennifer, she's the vice president in our site beekeepers.
Sorry.
So anyway, sorry that I didn't let you know who she was.
Materials.
But she's going to have our next class, and is that going to be the biology?
This is my biology.
Yeah, science. She's going to do investigative science of our honeybees, but it's the biology of honeybees. Biology is a very important subject about our honeybees. The more we know what makes them tick, the better we can be beekeepers. So important to take a lot of notes here. There are a lot of other good programs out there. I would suggest you look at all the biology of the honeybee you can look at, as long as it's got a doctor or professor in front of their name. Be careful about the stuff you look at on YouTube. But anyway, with that being said, Jennifer, you ready to get started?
I'm passing out some good stuff.
Okay, while she's doing that, one thing I wanted to tell you, our last speaker talked about bee stings. Yes, it's nice and important to move that stinger away, but if there is bee sting ointments, most people are having to pay $5, $6, $7, $8 for them, and it will remove the sting immediately, but you don't have to do that. Go to Walmart. My wife buys a gallon of white vinegar. It's about $2 or $3 a gallon at Walmart. She takes these little medicine jars, and she puts cotton balls in them, and she fills that up with white vinegar. As soon as you scrape that stinger away, if you'll take one of those little cotton balls with some of that white vinegar on it, and if you'll rub that sting area, it does two things. It will remove the sting in about 10 to 20 seconds. The other thing it's going to do is mask the pheromones, because when she left that stinger there, she also left her pheromones to tell all of her buddies, go sting that spot. So if you use this white vinegar, you'll be surprised how that does that. It really takes the sting away real quick. With that being said, I think Jennifer's ready, so I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer. You ready, young lady?
I think so.
You.
After he shows me how to use this. All right. There we go. All right. Well, my name's Jenny. Bear with me. I'm a little nervous of a speaker, and I like science. I'm also hoping that this will be a little more fun and not just some serious biology talk. I want you guys to take away some trivia questions, because you never know when you're going to need them. If they ever put some, maybe we can have like a trivia session one day at a meeting for our new beekeepers. But we're talking about the science of honeybees. All right, everybody knows honeybees are insects, right? We got through that part of biology in high school, and we all kind of remember that. We're talking about insecticidal problems. Bees are insects, and insects have their pros and cons. A lot of our insects are great pollinators, and also provide food, one for us if we decide we want to eat them, and also for other animals, so they're a big part of our ecosystem. However, insects, not honeybees of course, insects also come with their cons, because we call them pests. There's some that cause us problems, one by competing for our food sources, with our crops and things like that, but they also spread diseases. So there's some insects that are not so beneficial to humans themselves. But because bees also fall in the realm of insects, the chemicals that we use on the pest insects can also affect our bees. So that's something on your beekeeping journey to just kind of keep in mind and be aware of, and learn different products that are sold. One for landscaping, because there's a lot of beekeepers that are going to have problems, especially with your neighbors, that are going to be using chemicals, one to keep their yard looking good, but also to kill insects. Mosquito spraying is a really big one. So you're going to have times where you're going to need to be aware of what is going on in your neighborhoods or in the county. living near power lines, things like that, because you're gonna have chemicals used around your bees, and there is some effects that can happen to them. We have what are called pesticide kills, where your bees, you might just find your colony all dead. So there's unfortunate use with chemicals against the pest or the pesticides that we use on other insects. So just be aware. Learn about the chemicals. Also learning to recognize the symptoms of pesticide exposure. Not all exposure is completely deadly to your entire hive. Typically those chemicals have to be sprayed pretty close to your hive in order for it to affect the entire hive. But your bees are exposed to insecticides all the time during foraging, and they can bring back minute or small amounts and expose the hive to them over time. So learning, kind of looking what weak hives look like and symptoms like that, which you'll learn plenty along your way, especially in our disease and disorder course. So you'll get a lot of questions answered there. So with that being said, let's start at the beginning. They're an animal. They're in the animal kingdom. They are in the phylum Arthropoda, which is just jointed feet. They are in the class Insecta, and we'll go over that and the characteristics of insects. The order Hymenoptera. We'll also go into some of the characteristics of that with our bees. They are in the family Apidae, which kind of stands for long-tongued bees. Genus Apis. Apis is just Latin for bees. And the particular honeybee that we're interested in, the species is going to be Mellifera, and we touched a little on it in the last presentation, which is just honey bearing. So Mellifera, honey bearing. But there are a bunch of different kind of species of honeybees, not just our Apis mellifera. There's about 5 or so subspecies. Laberosa, Himalayan honeybee, your dorsata, your giant honeybee, your Apis florea, which is your dwarf honeybee, and these last two that I just mentioned, actually interesting, are open nesters, so they don't make their nests in cavities. They're going to be out in the open. It's actually really cool to look some of those pictures up. Your Serrana, which is actually your eastern honeybee, and you'll probably hear a lot about this species of honeybee because they are most adapted to the varroa mite because they have lived together and have found a way to coexist, and the eastern honeybees do not have as much problems with the varroa mites as our western honeybee do. And then of course, mellifera. We also know them as European honeybee or our western honeybee. But some fun facts about mellifera. They're not just found in Europe. There's actually a wide range and that they live in. You're gonna find them in temperate, tropical, and even arid, dry areas. So you're gonna find them all the way from Europe, Middle East, and into Africa. So this is our western honeybee, so the Apis mellifera. Fossils have been found over 30 million years ago that honeybees have not changed very much. They have evolved to do what they do, and it's very amazing as we continue, as you continue to learn about them. I'm fascinated by them. This is a great trivia question. If anybody knows, go ahead. Did North America actually have a native honeybee?
No.
No, but actually, from some stuff that I found in some other honeybee books, we did, about 14 million years ago. It was known as Apis nearctica. So we actually did, but most of the honeybees that we think about today are definitely not native to North America. We have imported all of the honeybees that we have. There's about 30 subspecies or races of honeybee within the western honeybee. Don't worry, you don't have to learn about all of them because there's only a few that we're really interested in. They're divided into different lineages. This gets really sciencey. Keith Delaplane does a great talk on this. If he does his talks, because he retired last year, I believe he also has a book So if you go seek that out, Keith Delaplane, he was a professor at University of Georgia talking all about the lineages, and they have different theories about where they evolved and how they moved and things like that. So that's actually really cool. But the subspecies that we're interested in, obviously we have Mellifera mellifera. That's the German black bee. That was the biggest bee that was imported first over into North America when the travelers came over and settled over here. They brought the German black bee. So that was Apis mellifera mellifera. Ray touched upon your Italian bees, your Apis linguistica. We also have Apis carnica, which is also known as carnelians. You may find as you're searching for different, when you go to purchase your bees, you may find that race of bee thrown out there. It's okay. There's different characteristics to each type of race of bee that you can purchase. You have your Russian bees. As far as I know, they're a type of carnelian, but they have moved to a different area. Russian bees, from what I know, are not beginner bees because they do have a little more defensive behavior. So they're not the calmest, gentlest bees, but they have found that they do have a very good hygienic behavior and have found that they do very well against varroa mites. Mellifera cassica, or the Caucasian bee, I'll just name it as that. That's another type of bee. And the other last one is going to be your Apis mellifera sculata. Now this is a bee that we definitely worry about. They're going to be found in more warmer temperatures. That is your African honeybee. So they have a very defensive behavior. And you're going to find a lot of those bees probably more in South America, and they have developed a way of handling these bees. So those are, those African honeybee things down in Florida where you've seen people kind of accidentally come upon one of their colonies and they just ball up animals, people, and have been known to kill people just because they're so defensive. We worry about them because we do worry about the defensive nature of their genetics and getting into our more local bee population. So that's something you might hear from this type of bee. All right, so getting more a little science. Class Insecta. Insects have 3 regions of the body: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen, and they're all separated. They have 1 to 2 pair of wings, 3 pairs of legs, so 6 legs in total, 1 pair of antennae. A lot of them have body hair, and obviously insects have exoskeletons, which make them really good for some of that protection. When we further put them down into the order Hymenoptera, we kind of look at membrane-like wings, and obviously everybody loves those bee wings. It's very popular. Bees have 2 pairs of those wings. So continuing with the science, we're going to start with the head. They have some sensory organs. They have the eyes. They are compound eyes, and they can actually see in the UV range, which humans cannot. They have something on their head called the ocelli. This is another great trivia question. What this does is it helps detect light. Drones have a very big one, and if you ever, because they do a lot of flying for mating, they use this organ on their head a lot for traveling. And if you ever notice, if you get some bees in your garage, and you might if you keep some of your honey stuff there, not an idea, but it happens. If you turn off the lights, you might find all the bees go to the ground. It's because they need light to be able to move around. So that's the area on the head that helps with that. They have antenna, that's their sensory organ. Their antenna can smell, taste, feel. They can feel humidity, they can feel temperature, they can detect sound waves, and it has been said that they can even check flight speed. If you ever watch videos though, it's really funny because you watch bees going in to the landing board of their hives and they do it not so gracefully. So, there is that, but it's fun watching bee videos. Mouth parts, you kind of see the little mouth part coming out there. They do have that sucking tongue, helps them collect nectar. And also they exchange the fluids with their sister workers in the hive. Foragers will come in, exchange the nectar to the ones that take the nectar back up into the hive and do whatever they do with that. Mandibles. Mandibles are going to be really important, especially for the bee workers, because it helps work that wax in the hive. So they're going to be the biggest ones that use those. And then bees have a lot of glands. They are they produce a lot of pheromones, and that's how bees communicate, because it's very dark in those hive cavities. And there's going to be a lot of big words that took me a long time to learn and remember. In the head, you're going to have glands, your mandibular glands and your hypopharyngeal gland. And those are also, they're going to help produce brood food or pheromones to help keep the process in the hive going. Next, we're going to go to the thorax. The thorax is probably the easiest to remember. You have your legs, your wings, your muscles in there to move them around. And they also have some spiracles, and your spiracles are just your little airways and insects that help them breathe. But this is the external attachment area for the bees. So now, going back to the other slides, who can tell me how many pair of legs bees have? They have 6 legs, but how many pairs? 3. All right, raise your hand if you answered correctly. We're going to keep people awake. I'm so sorry. I'm going to try. It's right before lunchtime. I'm not a great thrower. We're going to keep you. Who else? Who wants some candy? They answered. Anybody else? Yeah, no? Okay. We'll get some to you later. I don't know if I can make it that far. But all right. And you had a chance to get candy. I saw you up there earlier. All right. So that's my first trivia question. That was an easy one. Or second one, that was an easy one. Next, we're going to go to their abdomen. They have a heart. Nice fact, it's 5-chambered. They have a gut with the workers. They have what is called the honey gut, where they store, where they're going to store their nectar on the way back, or their honey stomach, where they store the nectar on the way back. They have something, if anybody knows anything about birds, also a ventriculus, which is also used for digestion, just like it is in birds. Scientists like to use similar names for different animals. Your next one is going to be your fat bodies. This is actually a really important one. There's been a lot of research done with varroa mites, and this is where the varroa mites do the most damage, because through research they have found that the fat bodies is where the mites go to feed. Here's some other big words. Your fat bodies help produce, let me see if I can pronounce it, I can do this. Vitellogenin, we'll say it's vital, vitellogenin, and that actually helps the bees, your winter bees, get through the winter. So it's a very important thing that the fat bodies help to produce for the winter, and that's actually what the mites go and attack. So that's something very important to remember as far as mites are concerned, and also helps with immune system, things like that. So when the mites attack those fat bodies, you're looking at loss, some decrease in immunity as well. And then I hit the next one. Nope, don't go that way. Oh, no. Okay. And then you have your reproductive glands. So your reproductive glands are going to be most important in your queen because she's the one who is laying the eggs. With those reproductive glands, or those reproductive areas, you do have your ovaries for the queen and her spermatheca, which is just a fancy name for where she stores the sperm from the male. And then your male is going to have testes, because that's what his job is. Your workers are going to have the queen puts out those pheromones that actually decrease the ability for those workers to have the developed ovaries and the spermatheca and things like that. So your workers are not going to have the same reproductive glands because that's not their job. Their job is well, we'll go in that later on, but their job is taking care of the queen and then the brood and also collecting the needs for the hive. So other glands that you can find that are associated with the abdomen. Wax glands. Your workers are going to have your wax glands, and those are going to be really important. This lovely little picture here with this bee sticking her little butt up in the air is actually a behavior that you're going to see in your hives during your inspections, because if they get really worked up, something you're going to see them do is you're going to start seeing some of them stick that little butt up in the air, and you're going to see them fanning their wings. They have a scent gland. Another trivia question that's really good if you remember it, it was actually on a test for the certified beekeeping program. The Nossanov gland is the gland that helps produce a scent. And it's a very nice scent that you might actually smell while you're working the hives. It's kind of like a lemony lemongrass, which is actually a kind of smell that people use in swarm lures to help attract bees to the swarm traps that they have, to catch swarms. So that's kind of where that scent comes from. That lemony lemongrass scent comes from the worker bees because they're trying to let their sisters know where to come back to the hive. So that one's a really fun gland. And then obviously we have our sting and our venom glands in that back area as well. The queen does have a stinger, but she rarely stings people. She's going to use that more to sting her sisters with the competition. If you have multiple queens that emerge in your hive, the one who emerges first usually will go out and find her other sisters. If there's a couple that out, they'll duke it out, and they will use their stingers against each other, not usually against humans. Drones are fun. I love them. They don't have stingers, so we like drones. And then obviously your worker bee. Your worker bee is going to be the biggest defense system for the hive. So those are the ones that are going to have the most built out sting, venom, and stinger for that. And no, we're not talking about the musician, for those that are still old enough to remember Sting. All right, so continuing on, we're going into the 3 types of bees. We are going into our workers, our queens, and our drones. Bees are eusocial, and there's a couple characteristics that make bees eusocial, and they work together in the hive. So cooperative brood care. So everybody cooperates in helping with the brood care. They also have reproductive division of labor. So you have your queen who is laying the eggs, and then you have your workers who are taking care of the brood. So that's a big part of a eusocial characteristic. And then they have overlapping generations, because bees have such a short life cycle. They're always reproducing and, kind of having a lot of generations throughout the year. So those are the 3 characteristics that makes these honeybees eusocial. There's some other characteristics. There's some other bees that do have some of these behaviors, but not quite like the honeybee. Like ants and termites, also eusocial in their characteristics as well. All right, some other trivia questions. Females are diploid, so that just means they have the two sets of chromosomes. They have haploid, 1 set of chromosome. There are 16 and a set of 32. 16 for haploid males and a set of 32 chromosomes for the diploid females. The females are fertilized eggs, so all females are diploid and males are haploid. So when a queen passes an egg, she decides if it's going to be fertilized and become a worker, or if it's not fertilized and become a drone. So that's important to remember, because there are some things that can happen in the hive that workers can do to cause some issues. There are 2 sexes, male and female, but there's a caste system within here. The castes are not the male and female. The castes have to do with the different jobs between the queen and the worker. So that is what we mean by a caste system, is that it's not male and female. It has to be a caste system when you have two of the same gender doing different jobs within the hive. Now going on, kind of a little more characteristics of Hymenoptera. They do engage in complete metamorphosis. So they're going to have an egg stage, a larva stage, a pupa stage, and an adult stage. And as you can see on here, there are the different stages here, and they take care of them as they need to throughout the time. And we call this collectively, all of the different stages within a hive, we call that the brood. The cards that I passed around, this is probably one of the most important slides that you can remember. And this is going to be the number of days that it takes for these different, the queen, the workers, and the drones to emerge. You have 16 days from egg to emerging for a queen, rough estimate. It's not always exact every time. 21 days for a worker and 24 days for a drone. Now this can be important if you ever decide to get into queen rearing, because it's really important to know when queens are going to emerge to help with swarm management, because if you don't catch that queen at a certain point in time, they can be more tendency to swarm. Swarm management is going to be a big part. And then your drones at 24 days, your varroa mites tend to go for that longer incubation time and tend to go for those drones due to the amount of time that it takes for them to emerge from the hive. So always remember that one. Starting with the egg. It's good to have this. This is about the size 1/16 inch. She's gonna lay it, and it's going to be sitting straight up. For those of you who can't see, eggs are the best part of trying to look into your hive, because this is one stage that you can tell if you can't find your queen, if you have a queen. If you can't find her, because it takes a while to learn how to find a queen, if you can see eggs, you know she's laid within the first 3 days. You know, she's been there within the last 3 days. So that's really important to remember, eggs, but they can be difficult to see. But once you start seeing them, it's pretty exciting, and that's just one stage that can help you along within your inspection. So it takes about 3 days to become a larva. Then you go to the larva stage. You can kind of see all of these different sized larvae in here. They turn into, they'll go down, hatch, and they'll come out and go into a little C shape. They're eating the food that has been left in there by the worker bees. They move along the bottom for about 5 to 6 days, and then they will start to develop into your pupa stage. And this is kind of inside, because a lot of these are going to become capped at some point, and this is what they look like as they're developing and before they emerge into fully grown adults. Your adult body size will not change, but physiologically they are not fully developed. And there's different stages for worker bees in the jobs that they do within the hive. Usually in their early stages, they're going to be taking care of the queen and also the brood at the beginning. So we're going to be talking about the workers. Workers are going to be, so this slide here has what worker cells are going to look like on your hive inspections. They're going to be these nice flat cardboard colored cappings. Usually you're going to find them in the center of the brood nest. That's where they usually are laid. Your drone cells, so those are your male bees, you're going to find these, they're larger, they're going to be more bullet shaped, so they're not going to be nice and flat, they're going to come up above the surface. And it's really easy to see whenever you have them right next to your worker cells. Cappings protrude out to, like I said, form a bullet shape. Your workers are gonna live to about 30 to 45 days, and longer in the winter. So your winter bees are gonna be living longer for that reason that I mentioned before. They're gonna build up those fat bodies during the winter and have what they need to keep them alive longer than the 45 days during winter, somewhere around 60 or more days for your winter bees. And again, tasks vary by age and are influenced by queen pheromones, worker pheromones, and not all of the tasks are set in stones. Some may stay more in a certain area and some may not, but they generally progress. Usually by 12 days, they're gonna start going from queen care and brood care, and they're going to turn into what are known as cleaner bees, or removing dead bees, undertaker bees, for the hive. After that, they're gonna progress more into your defender bees, so they're gonna learn how to go from defending the hive, going from undertaking and cleaning the hive to your defending. So this is gonna be your big workforce, especially after you get a big buildup of your defender bees. And then usually from 18 days on, they're gonna be, usually your oldest bees are gonna be the ones that go out and forage. So that's gonna be kind of that. So our next life stage is our queen bees. So these guys, they're going to be the least numerous type cells that you have. And if you look at this slide's a little good because you see that bottom cell, that really big bottom cell on the bottom. We like to call it kind of peanut-shaped cell. Kind of above there, there's a few, a little more bullet-shaped cells, so you have your drone cells. And then you can kind of see farther up in the left-hand corner your flatter cappings for your worker cells. So this has a little bit of all of them. You're gonna find them faced in a downward position, and a lot of times, especially during swarm season, you're gonna find them at the bottom of your frames. So that's a really good place to look for them. Occasionally you'll find them in the middle of your frames or different varying places, but definitely during swarm season, you're gonna find them at the bottom of your frames. And that is what they're going to look like. It's very natural for swarming to happen in the spring. It's just a natural product of the hive reproducing itself and splitting off into, if they all stayed in one spot, then they're never gonna be able to, continue growing their numbers. Something could happen that way. So it's a natural pest management system that they have for themselves. So you have your queen cells. So a little bit about the biology of your worker bees. They are female, as we said before. Workers perform all the work. So beginning, again, care and feed the queen. They feed the brood. They do that, they age with something called the juvenile hormone, which helps the bees age, as well as using a lot of feedback systems from within the hive as well. Brood puts off some pheromones and things as well, and it's a feedback system telling the bees what they do, how much they need to produce, how many workers they need, because it also is a feedback system with how much food, how much water is out there in the environment and things like that. So it's all one big feedback system. And so this will help them decide what they need to do in here. The one thing I forgot to mention before, they also build the comb. So that's gonna primarily happen in your springtime, build up when they have the most resources to build the comb. Building the comb, that one starts around 10 days. They clean the nest. They defend the hive at about 18 to 21 days. They forage. They do their orientation flights. So the orientation flights are going to be the other thing that you're going to need to pay attention to, because if you might think they're swarming, but if you see them doing their little figure eights kind of in front of the hive, they're not all in a big gigantic frenzy, and there can be a lot of bees all doing orientation flights back and forth like this, kind of in a figure eight. It's going to be more of an orientation than it is going to be a swarm. So you'll learn over time to learn what's orientation flights. Like I said, there can be a lot of bees doing that versus, you know, a swarm where it's a little more frenzied and not quite as what looks routine or, you know, oriented. And then they forage for food, and they also recruit nestmates to help forage. Tom Seeley has done a lot of work with wild bees, so if you guys like books, that's another author to look at. He's out of Cornell University, and he's written a lot of books and done a lot of research on the native bee population. Workers also decide what need collecting, whether they need pollen, nectar, water, and something called propolis. Pollen and nectar, those are two different food sources. One, nectar is carbohydrates. Your pollen is going to be more your proteins. They do need water to help regulate temperature and things like that in the hive. And propolis, they're finding, is very important for your hives. Some people don't like it. It's very sticky, but it serves a very important function in the hive. They find that it has a lot of antimicrobial properties. So they will also stuff cracks and things like that. So a lot of people will recommend putting grooves in the inside of your box to help the bees actually propolis the inside of the hive, because it does have good benefits. They also determine if the workers also determine if the colony is ready to swarm. They have their little cues within the hive. Honeybee Democracy by Tom Seeley goes a lot into that. And they get their queen ready. They go out and scout for a new area, and they come back and they get the swarm. So the swarm all ready to go. And it's a very sad thing to watch your bees fly away, but it's something that happens and something we try to mitigate during spring. So honey stomachs, pollen baskets, and wax glands on the legs of your worker bee. You have modified hair called corbiculi. We also call it the pollen basket. And then the wax glands for the workers. Workers also produce their pheromones. They have the brood food, and then again the venom gland and the stinger with that. When workers go awry, so if you have a weak queen where she's not producing the pheromone she needs to stop the worker bees from laying. So you can have an old queen, something can happen to your queen, you know, she dies somehow, you accidentally squish her, it will happen. It's not the end of the world, we'll figure out how to get a new queen. You know, she's not around to put out her pheromones. They know pretty quickly that she's gone. It generally takes, I think, about four or so weeks for the workers to really kind of produce. They have non-functional ovaries, and obviously they don't have what they need to store. They don't go out and mate, so they don't have any sperm. But they can produce eggs. So as you see here, this picture is also very important, because if you ever see this in the hive, it means your queen is gone and you have a laying worker. The workers tend to not put eggs in the middle. They tend to go off to the side, and you're going to have multiple eggs in a cell. It can be very difficult to stop a laying worker, but that's something to work with your mentors on when that time comes. Knock on wood, I haven't had that happen yet. So if you make sure you're doing your inspections and you catch that you don't have a queen early, then you can usually overcome this problem. So the queen. So a little bit about the queen. Any fertilized egg has the potential to be a queen. What helps determine, besides what helps determine an egg or a larva becoming a queen, is the amount of royal jelly that is fed to it by the workers. Again, a big feedback loop within the hive. Typically, again, you're going to see it in spring because they want to branch off and swarm and create a new nuclei of a hive. So it's the amount of royal jelly, and it's a nice white liquid that you'll see in there. I've culled a number of queen cells, and if you do that, and you're okay doing that, it's actually really cool to go in and see what the bees look like, and you see that nice thick layer of royal jelly. And they've done a lot of testing on how much royal jelly it takes for a worker to stay a worker versus to become a queen, because all of them at the get-go are fed royal jelly, but those that decide to, the workers that decide to produce a queen will just continue feeding that royal jelly to that queen. And so you can see here it develops the ovaries and the spermatheca for the sperm storage. So she'll emerge, and over the next 7 days, she'll get fed, and she will make her mating flight. They go out, and hopefully she'll go out to where the drones are, and she will get mated, come back, and start laying, and usually like within probably about 2 weeks, hopefully you know you have a queen. She mates up to about 20 drones. The sperm from those drones gets stored, but she only mates once. And then she comes back and continues to lay. She lays fertilized eggs for workers and unfertilized for males, so we went through that before. A queen can lay up to about 1,500 eggs per day. This is also another good slide. You can see the workers kind of up in the middle, and if you look down below, you can kind of see those bulleted larger cells down below, and maybe, I believe that's a queen cell. That one little teeny tiny spot, either that or it's just some extra comb. But that's a good slide to kind of see. Your honey stores and your pollen stores should be around the brood, all around up around the edges, but it looks like she's a really good layer. If you see this frame, you're good to go. Not a lot of spotty patterns. Those are just patterns where the bees have emerged. And she uses this sperm until she runs out. When she does that, you're going to see a lot of different things happen. You're going to see a lot of spotty pattern where you're not going to have a lot of normal, nice, flat worker brood. You're going to see more drones being laid, especially in the worker cells. The drone cells are bigger than the worker cells, and as you look at your frames, you'll learn to kind of see the difference in size. And you're going to have poor brood pattern. It's not going to be like that nice pattern right here. She produces pheromones to suppress workers and from the ability to produce eggs. She stimulates foraging, prolongs workers' life, and coordinates swarming as well. The workers are constantly grooming the queen, and when they do that, they spread her pheromones throughout the hive, and that's kind of how it gets spread. Also, by walking on the frames and stuff like that, it's also spreading some of the pheromones to help the hive know that the queen is still around. And on to our last one, the poor drones. They're my favorites. They're really cute. You're going to be able to tell, so our females are going to have those big elongated bodies. Most of the bees that you see outside are going to be your worker bees. These guys are short, pudgy little things with big, gigantic eyes. When I'm looking for a queen, because they're so big, even though they're bigger than the workers, my eyes always go to them, but I know it's not the queen because he's short, pudgy, and he also doesn't have a little stinger, and he's got those big binocular eyes. They're so cute, but they're also my favorite because, they don't sting. The first few weeks he's developing, he's eating, mooching off of the girl's work, spent safely in the hive, but he does have a hard task because he does have to go out and fly. So when they mature, they fly from the hives, usually in the afternoons. They have done research for times, not all that. They have specific times during the afternoons that they fly. Sometimes they'll go a little later into the evening, like 5, 6, but usually it's around a little before and a little after lunchtime. They fly to what we call your DCA, which is your drone congregation areas. So that's another good word to remember. And that's where the mating occurs. So that's where your queens are gonna go fly out to and find those areas. They persist in the same areas from year to year, and they have some landmarks, trees, hedges, edges of forests. There's a Georgia beekeeper, Julia Mahood. She's also a Metro Atlanta beekeeper. I believe she's president of GBA now. She has a website called Map My DCA, and she's done a lot of work with actually flying mechanical drones to go find drone congregation areas, and she uses queen pheromone that they use to find the queens when they go out for mating. So it's actually really cool. I encourage you to look that stuff up for that. So the drones fly from colonies and together, so they're all together. The virgin queen goes out and flies through these areas and are followed by the drones. They try to do, there is possibility of inbreeding, but they typically have a way set up where the drones, I believe, go out farther than the queens. So there's a little bit of protection against inbreeding, but it's possible. And with that, I put a lot of words out there, and thanks for sticking with me. And let's see, we have enough time.
We have plenty of time.
We got plenty of time. Oh, I went too fast this time. Okay, all right. So I guess we have time for questions, and maybe this time I won't pelt people with candy.
That was okay.
I have more because everybody looks a little tired, and I was droning on. I learned these dad jokes from other people,
All right,
by the
I
way.
can't get this to go, so you just go ahead, and if it's not loud enough, I'll say it a little louder.
So the drone cells being kind of bullet shaped, is that a result of using foundation that's all the same size? Like if you did foundationless and let the bees draw it out, would they not be good?
The question is with drones, with the foundation drawn out, has anything to do with the frame, the situation, or the size? Would you like to explain that?
So the drone, I actually went to, it was a really interesting talk about how the bees create the cells. It was very technical, so I can't speak too much about that, but somehow they build the drone cells where they need to, and they're bigger in size, and they build them where they need to. A lot of your plastic foundation frames are going to have the pattern mostly for worker size cells. Bees will do what they need to though, where you'll find a lot of your drone cells kind of down at the bottom and even on the underneath of the frame. It's called burr comb, and they'll make their drone pattern down there if they don't like, the frames that you have for them. For your pest management, they make these green frames, which are for drone. So you can use that because varroa mites tend to like the drone brood more because it's more incubation time. Those plastic surfaces have larger cells. I don't remember the numbers and how big each cell, the different sizes between the cells. But the queen can actually take her legs, feel how big a cell is, and she knows what she wants to lay and where she's laying it. So they have a typical pattern that you'll see. Hopefully that answered it. I was
Let me
passing
get
it
this
too.
back here, yes.
So with the DCAs locked into a permanent location with development going on around us, do we understand the impact that if that landmark disappears, the impact on the hives and the breeding yet? Or
I'm sure there are. I don't know about, I haven't heard too much research, talking about the impacts of that, but I will say that bees will find a way. I don't know, like with all of those different landmarks, because I think she even talked about, different elevations of, not just the trees and stuff, but maybe even water markers and different elevations like valleys and stuff like that in different areas. So there might be some change, but I don't know if they use how much of the sun they use as well in their navigational. They're just amazing. So.
Yes, sir.
What's the life cycle of a queen?
So your life cycle is going to start out just like any other female.
Right.
And she's going to, hatch out, and they're going to have you have your little card on there.
I didn't get one.
You didn't get one, I might have missed you. You might have been getting some food.
Thank you.
But you're going to have the same life cycle. She's going to hatch out in 3 days from that egg.
Right.
She's going to be fed. If the workers decide they want more of a queen, then they're going to give more of that royal jelly. They're gonna be in a certain area on the hive, and they're gonna start building out that cell for the queen herself.
Right.
And so it's actually really cool. Usually about 9 days, everybody gets capped at that based off of how much they give her extra room, because she has to have that extra room for all the reproductive organs, and she'll just sit in there and develop. And then at usually around 16 days, she's gonna emerge, which means she's gonna emerge before the workers at 21 days. So they're gonna take a little while longer to form, but they have less of that royal jelly, so they're not gonna be forming the same reproductive organs. And then you have your drones, which are your haploids, so they're unfertilized eggs, and they take the longest. But they're usually capped around 9 days, so the queens are gonna take less time to emerge, your workers are gonna be in the middle, and your drones are gonna take the longest.
How long does a queen last?
So I did not say that. Your
Right.
queens, that is a point of theory right now, and a lot of different management styles for different places. So this is gonna depend on something you guys decide to do. A lot of people like to replace their queens every year. So that is gonna be, up to the beekeepers, but typically life cycle is gonna be 1 to 5 years. We're finding that queens are not living quite as long. I think I've tested, with some of my queens. I've gotten into the 3rd year and they've died on me. Last year was my first one that, passed, and I kept her as long as I could. I'm not really in it for like honey production. I sell the honey because I don't want a bunch of honey at my house. So I'm more of a hobbyist, and I experiment, and so I can learn with my bees. So generally, 3 years as far as I've gotten, but people are saying that queens are not quite as good quality as they used to be. So, but researchers are working on that.
Thank you.
For your queen that went on
gotta-
for 3 years.
I'll let you do that since you got a low voice.
For your queen that went on for 3 years, did you notice them developing a new queen for her, or would you have to replace her?
They did not. They did not. So we also talk about you'll find some characteristics of some bees might have more maybe genetics for swarming. So you might find that those bees, want to swarm every year. So they're gonna they're gonna make new queen cells every year. This one, for some reason,